Gracious and loving God, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable unto you, my God, my strength, and my Redeemer. Amen. Amen. Okay. When we go to the movies, or we read a novel, or we play a role-playing video game, we put ourselves into the story. We become a part of the action, if only as an observer. But we're right there. Otherwise, Neo on that other world would be unbelievable. Captain Picard would never have explored the galaxy. And Jack certainly would not have defeated the giant at the top of the beanstalk. And yet, all of these stories, these experiences have meaning for us. We get beyond the veneer of the storyline, and we find something that we can relate to. We find the truth that is beyond the fact or the fiction of the story. Jack becomes a hero, whether or not he ever existed. Jean-Luc remains impressively wise, if flawed. And Neo, well, is Neo. And yet, when we hear that Elijah rose into heaven on a whirlwind, or that Jesus was visited by Elijah and Moses, we step back. And we either accept it as actual fact, or we chalk it up to a silly story told to gullible people. After all, our picture of the universe is much, much different than that from the time of Moses. It's different from the people in the Middle East 2,000 or so years ago. Before the last 100 years, before the last few hundred years, most people believed that the world was flat. And before that, there was a model of the universe that consisted of the earth in the middle, and then water above and below. That's how you get rain, by the way, and a well. Water above and below. And beyond that, heaven and hell. It was, I don't know, sort of a sandwich universe. You know? So the idea that someone could rise to the realm of God through the sky was plausible. It made sense. For us, though, the idea is simply an outmoded vision from long ago. We smile, or we smirk. And with our superior knowledge, we see the stories as unrealistic. Or we side with the UFO hunters on TV and view these stories as absolute fact, and see heaven as a giant spaceship and God as some kind of extraterrestrial being. But, what if we decide that we can get something from these stories without arguing about the factuality of them? What if we read them as we read novels or blogs or today, newspapers? If we look beyond the words and we look for the meaning, for what the author is trying to tell us, maybe we can find some truth. Maybe we can find some truth. Not fact, but truth. Truth that has meaning even for our busy, hectic lives. Truth that reaches us right to the core of who we are and of who we are called to be. Now, Peter and James and John saw the vision of Jesus along with Elisha and Moses on the mountain. On the mountain. And for them, it was the reality, the truth of Jesus being. And as we know, later, Jesus was to face the most fearful thing for most people. The most fearful thing, death. And we know that he faced it with courage and with faith. But his disciples, those guys sitting up there on the mountain, needed to know that this death was more, much more, than the Romans executing a criminal. They needed to know that there is more to Jesus and to them and to us, more than life and death. They needed to know that there is a God who speaks to us. To us. And in this case, God spoke to Elisha in a whirlwind and to Jesus on the mountain. And later, Peter and James and John were called to carry Jesus' message. Now, most people in this situation would have decided that the mission they had been on was over. It's done, the leader's gone. We'll just go back to our former life. But the disciples didn't go back to fishing. They continued to preach and to teach and to carry the message of love to the society around them. Even, maybe especially, when those people that they were carrying the message to pushed them away, rebuffed them totally. You know, maybe we have a similar mission. You know? We are called to see ourselves, each of us, as the descendants of Peter and James and John. We are called to see the ministry of Jesus as an ongoing one. The mission is to let people know that they are to love God and that they are to love one another. And even more importantly, the mission is to let people know that they, us, every one of us, all of us, are loved. We are loved. And, you know, if we can keep the idea, keep that image of Jesus on the mountaintop, if we can just put ourselves in the movie and see ourselves sitting with the disciples on that high place, maybe we can see ourselves as a little part of the miracle. A little part of the miracle. You know, maybe we can suspend our disbelief, just like we do when we go to the movies. We can suspend our disbelief long enough to just start acting as if we believe. You know? And if we do that, we start acting that way, maybe we could actually come to believe. We can come to believe that we, all of us, have been anointed. We've been anointed by Christ to go into the world. We have been anointed by Christ to spread the word. We can believe that. We can believe that. And we can reach out then to the person next to us. And once again, not the person sitting here next to you, but the person on the bus, or the person on the corner, or the person in the grocery store, or your next door neighbor. And just let that person know that love is there. It's there. It's there for the asking. And sometimes you don't even have to ask. You just have to recognize it. We can do all of this. 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 Right? Put the emphasis where you want it. Maybe one day people will see a movie or read a book about the miracles at Milwaukee MCC. Because it will be hard to believe that this small community was able to accept themselves. And that this small community was able to accept others. It may be hard for them to believe that there was this little oasis of peace in the city of Milwaukee in the 21st century. Still, if we, all of us, believe and act, maybe they will hear the story. Maybe they will hear the fable. And maybe they will follow our lead. Maybe. So believe that you are called. Believe that you are called. Act. And be the person you are called to be. My friends, rise up. Amen.
Amen. Amen.